My name is Ethan Caldwell, and I'm 17, living in Cloverdale, Indiana, a sleepy town where the cornfields stretch wider than dreams, and the sky hums with the promise of thunderstorms. Life here is like a country song on repeat. Friday night. Football games, burgers at Rosie's Diner, and the same faces at the gas station. I'm not saying I hate it, but it's like waiting for the chorus to hit in a song that never quite gets there. I'm just a kid coasting through, dodging algebra homework and dreaming of something bigger, though I don't know what. But something happened that flipped my world upside down, and if something in your gut tells you to keep reading, drop an amen in the comments. If it feels too wild, just say, I'll keep listening. I hope you stick around because maybe you're the one who needs this story most. My family's not the type to make headlines. Dad's a mechanic, always tinkering with engines at the shop. A guy who believes life's problems can be fixed with a wrench and some elbow grease. Mom's quieter, a nurse at the county hospital, with a knack for seeing through people's tough fronts. We don't talk much about God at home. Not out of spite, just habit. There's a faded cross on the living room wall, gathering dust next to a photo of me at Little League. Mom used to drag me to Sunday service at St. Mark's when I was a kid, but by 15 she let me skip it. Dad's more into podcasts about science than sermons, always saying, there's an answer for everything, we just haven't found it yet. Me? I wasn't sure what I believed. Faith seemed like something for people who'd lost too much, and I hadn't lost anything yet. That morning started like any other. I was pedaling my bike to school, earbuds blasting a playlist I wasn't even listening to. Something felt off, though. Maybe the way the wind carried the scent of rain, or the old guy at the corner store staring like he knew something I didn't. I cut through Veterans Park, my usual route, where kids were kicking a soccer ball, and joggers huffed past. The air smelled of wet grass, and the oak trees stood tall, whispering peace in a world that never slows down. I was in my own head, thinking about a history test I hadn't studied for, when I hit the crosswalk by Main Street. The light was green for pedestrians, so I kept going, one hand on the handlebars, the other fiddling with my phone. Then, it happened. A pickup truck, red, gleaming, monstrous, came barreling toward me, its horn blaring like a warning from another world. I froze. The screech of tires ripped through the morning calm, followed by a sickening crunch of metal. My bike crumpled, and I was airborne, weightless, spinning like a leaf in a storm. Pain exploded as I hit the pavement, my body a broken marionette. Blood pooled around me, voices screamed, "Call 911!" and "Is he alive?" I tried to move, to speak, but my limbs ignored me. My heartbeat thundered, then slowed, fading, like a distant drum. Then nothing. No pain, no weight, just a lightness I'd never known. I was floating, watching my own body lie there, lifeless, as a crowd gathered. If you're still here, type Amen to say you've wondered what lies beyond life's edge. What I saw next changed everything. I wasn't ready for what came next. One moment, I was hovering over my broken body in Cloverdale. The next, a force, gentle but unstoppable, pulled me through a tunnel of light. Time didn't exist there, like a clock with no hands. The light wasn't just bright. It was alive, warm, wrapping around me like a hug I didn't know I needed. At the end, I saw him, Jesus, standing in a robe that shimmered like moonlight on a lake. His face was kind, human, yet holy, with eyes that saw through every layer of my soul. He didn't speak, but I felt his words in my heart, clear as a bell. Humanity stands at a crossroads. If you feel this stirring you, drop an amen in the comments. This is where the story gets real. He showed me a vision that hit like a freight train. I saw a storm, not just any storm, but a beast of nature, a hurricane with winds like roaring lions tearing through coastal towns. Waves swallowed neighborhoods, cars floated like driftwood, and bridges snapped like twigs. I heard screams, then silence, as water claimed everything. The scene shifted to a forest, but it was no forest anymore. Just charred stumps and ash, the sky red with smoke. Animals fled, then fell, their cries haunting me. The ground cracked open, and I felt the earth's pain. not just in my body, but in my spirit. These weren't random disasters. They were warnings tied to choices we're making now. I wanted to scream, to save someone, but I was just a witness. Then the vision changed again. I was in a city, skyscrapers crumbling like sandcastles, roads splitting open, swallowing cars. A woman clutched her child, running, only to be buried under debris. The screams weren't just sounds. They were waves of terror crashing into me. I couldn't breathe, not from smoke, but from the weight of their fear. The earth groaned, a deep, living moan, like it was begging us to stop hurting it. I realized this wasn't just about buildings or storms. It was about us, humanity, ignoring the planet's cries. We've been taking, breaking, and pretending we're in charge, but the earth is alive and it's hurting. Jesus' presence stayed with me, his silence louder than words. I felt his sorrow, not for me, but for the world. He showed me June, not a date, but a turning point. A moment when choices will shape our future. Tell them, his gaze seemed to say. They must choose wisely. I was trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of it all. This wasn't just my story. It was a call to action. If you're still reading, comment Amen to join me in praying for those choices. What I saw next wasn't just a vision. It was a mirror, showing us who we are and what we could become if we don't change. The visions didn't stop. Jesus pulled me into a world that felt too real, too broken. I stood in a city, not Cloverdale, but somewhere bigger, maybe Chicago or Philly, reduced to rubble. Gunfire cracked like fireworks gone wrong, mixed with screams and the thud of bombs. Buildings burned, not from nature's wrath, but from human hands. I saw an old man holding a dead child, his face empty, blood staining his jacket. A woman screamed, firing a gun into a crowd, her eyes wild with rage. This wasn't just war, it was humanity tearing itself apart. If this hits you, drop an Amen in the comments. We need to talk about this. I was swept into a crowd fleeing the chaos. People ran, not looking back, not helping each other. A kid fell, crying for his mom, but no one stopped. I tried to shout, to reach him, but I had no voice, no hands. Then, I was in a refugee camp. Barbed wire, harsh lights, soldiers with cold eyes pointing rifles at their own people. Kids shivered, clutching stolen bread. Others sat by unburied bodies. There was no kindness, just survival. The air smelled of despair, and I felt it choking me, not in my lungs but in my soul. This wasn't a far-off place. It was what we could become. The scene shifted again, like a channel changing. I saw a town square where people in matching jackets fought, not over borders but over beliefs, skin color, anything that made them different. Friends turned enemies, neighbors aimed guns at each other. A voice shouted, "They're not us!" and bullets followed. I fell to my knees, drowning in hopelessness. Jesus' whisper cut through. "They've forgotten their family." My tears burned, not falling but searing my heart. This wasn't divine punishment. It was our own doing, the result of choosing hate over love, division over unity. We're building this hell ourselves. I wanted to scream, to wake the world up, but the vision held me. I saw the roots of this chaos, not just in wars, but in everyday choices. Every time we judge, ignore, or take instead of give, we feed this fire. Jesus' gaze was steady, urging me to see the truth. We can stop this, but only if we choose differently. June loomed in my mind, a deadline for change. If you're still here, comment Amen to pray. We find the courage to choose love. The next vision showed me the people who could tip the scales and the weight they carry. The visions shifted, and I found myself in a cold, sleek conference room, far from Cloverdale's dusty streets. The air was heavy, the windows hidden behind dark curtains. A massive oak table sat in the center, surrounded by men and women in sharp suits, their faces tense, calculating. I knew they weren't ordinary. They were leaders, maybe senators, CEOs, or generals, the kind who shaped the world's fate. At the head was a figure, not a villain or a saint, but a man with a familiar swagger, holding a stack of papers. He was a symbol of power, like a president or a tycoon, his every move heavy with consequence. If this resonates, drop an amen in the comments. The room buzzed with arguments, not loud but sharp, like knives clashing. They debated war, money, secrets, choices that could save or doom millions. Some pushed for attack, others for deals, a few for truth. Their voices carried fear, pride, and flickers of hope. I felt their burden, the weight of decisions no one should make alone. The man at the center tapped his pen, his eyes scanning each face as if measuring their souls. I didn't see him as good or evil, just human, caught in a web of power and responsibility. The room was a battlefield, not of guns, but of choices. Jesus' voice echoed in my mind. Power is to serve, not to rule. They must choose for the world, not themselves. I saw glimmers of conscience in some eyes, hands shaking as they spoke of peace. But others were stone, driven by ego or fear. The stakes were clear. One wrong move could spark the chaos I'd seen. Cities burning, families torn apart. June hung over the room like a storm cloud, a moment when their choices would ripple across the globe. I wanted to shout, to beg them to listen, but I was just a ghost in their world. This wasn't just about them, it was about us. Every choice we make, voting, speaking, caring, shapes what they do. I felt hope, thin but real, that we could push them toward light. Jesus' gaze stayed with me, urging me to tell this story. If you're still reading, comment Amen to pray for those in power to choose wisely. The next vision wasn't about rooms or leaders. It was about the heart of humanity and what we've lost. The conference room faded, and I was pulled into a strange, boundless place. Not a city or a forest, but a sea of lights, like fireflies dancing in the dark. Each light was a soul, pulsing, yearning, but so many were dim, alone, drifting like leaves in a storm. I saw people chasing fame, money, power, empty lights that drowned out their true glow. Fear wrapped around them, a shadow making them hide behind screens, jobs, grudges. This wasn't just a vision, it was America, maybe the world, lost in a fog of loneliness. If this hits home, drop an amen in the comments. I saw folks in Cloverdale, in cities like Indianapolis or Dallas, passing each other without a glance. A guy at a coffee shop scrolled his phone, ignoring the barista's smile. A mom yelled at her kid, too tired to hug him. Souls flickered, desperate for connection, but fear and pride kept them apart. I felt their emptiness, a hole no money or likes could fill. They weren't just cut off from each other. They'd lost the spark of something bigger, God, love, the thing that makes us whole. It was like watching a nation forget its heart. But there were sparks of hope. I saw a teacher staying late to help a struggling kid, a stranger giving a homeless man a burger, a church group singing despite the rain. These lights burned brighter, pushing back the dark. They weren't famous or rich, just people choosing kindness, keeping the flame alive. I cried, not with tears, but with a mix of sorrow and hope. The disasters, wars, and divisions I'd seen weren't just about politics or nature. They came from this disconnect, this forgetting of love. Jesus' presence lingered, his silence, a call to action. June wasn't just a date, it was a chance to reconnect, to choose light over shadow. I felt a fire in me, a need to wake people up. If you're still here, comment Amen to join me in praying for those sparks to grow. The next vision showed me two roads, one to ruin, one to hope, and the choice we all face. The sea of souls vanished, and I stood before two paths, like highways stretching into the future. The first was a nightmare, worse than anything I'd seen. Cities like Miami and Seattle sank under floods. Forests burned to ash. Animals vanished. Wars raged, not just overseas but in our streets, neighbor against neighbor. Disease and hunger stalked the land, and hope was a word no one remembered. This wasn't fiction. It was a warning of what could be if we keep choosing wrong. If this shakes you, drop an amen in the comments. We can't ignore this. The second path was different. Not a fairy tale, but a hard-won hope. It started with people waking up, owning their mistakes. Farmers in Iowa shared water during droughts. Churches in Texas opened doors to strangers. Scientists and leaders worked together, not for fame but for life. It wasn't easy. There were fights, sacrifices, but I saw hands reaching out, hearts softening. Green fields grew again, kids laughed, and souls glowed brighter. This path wasn't promised. It was possible if we chose love, truth, and courage over greed and fear. The contrast hit me like a punch. One road led to death, the other to healing, but both were real, hanging on our choices. June loomed, not as a single day but a season of decision, when our actions, big and small, would tip the scales. I felt Jesus' urgency, his call to choose the hard path, to rebuild with compassion. Every vote, every kind word, every stand against hate mattered. I wanted to scream, "We can do this!" But the vision held me, showing me the stakes. This wasn't just about me or Cloverdale. It was about all of us. Jesus' gaze burned into me. Tell them, the choice is now. I felt hope, fragile but fierce, that we could turn back. If you're still reading, comment Amen to pray we choose the right path. The next vision was his final message, and it changed me forever. The paths faded, and Jesus stood before me again, his presence both gentle and fierce. No words, but his eyes spoke. Time is short. June wasn't just a month, it was a deadline, a moment when humanity's choices would lock in our fate. His love wrapped around me, but his sorrow cut deeper, for a world too busy to listen. He showed me the earth's pain, the soul's loneliness, the leader's burdens, all tied to this moment. I felt a mission, heavy as a mountain. Speak the truth. If this moves you, drop an amen in the comments. This is urgent. He showed me one last image. A clock, not ticking, but trembling. Its hands stuck just before midnight. The world spun below. Tornadoes in Kansas, riots in cities, but also people praying, helping, changing. The message was clear. We're not doomed yet, but we're close. Every choice counts. Recycling, voting, forgiving, loving. His gaze held me, a mix of hope and warning. Be the voice that wakes them. I nodded, though I had no body, feeling the weight of a task. I couldn't refuse. June was coming, and I had to warn everyone. Then, like a tide pulling back, I was yanked from the light. The world rushed in, beeping machines, antiseptic smells, pain searing my bones. I was in a hospital, tubes in my arms, nurses murmuring. My eyes burned from the fluorescent lights, but the visions burned brighter. Storms, wars, souls, choices. I whispered, "They have to choose," startling a nurse. She thought I was delirious, but I knew the truth. My body was broken, but my soul was awake, carrying a message too big to hold in. I couldn't stay silent. My parents came, tears in their eyes, but when I tried to explain, Dad frowned, and Mom just held me. The doctors said it was trauma, hallucinations from the crash. I felt alone, but Jesus' words echoed. Tell them. I had to find a way, no matter how hard. If you're still here, comment Amen to join me in spreading this warning. The final part is about my fight to be heard, and the hope we can still hold on to. Waking up in that hospital bed was like landing after a free fall. My body screamed with every move, broken ribs, a shattered leg, but the visions screamed louder. I told my parents about the storms, the wars, the souls, and June's deadline. Dad thought I'd hit my head too hard. Mom prayed quietly, unsure. The doctors spouted science, brain chemistry, oxygen loss, but I knew what I saw was real. I felt like a stranger in my own life, carrying a truth no one wanted to hear. If this speaks to you, drop an amen in the comments. This is my fight, but it's ours too. Recovery was brutal. Physical therapy was a daily battle. Relearning to walk, gripping a walker like it was my lifeline. But the real fight was in my soul. The visions didn't fade. They grew sharper, urging me to speak. I tried telling friends, but some laughed, others ghosted me. A few listened. A teammate from the football team, a girl from church, sharing stories of their own brushes with the divine. I read about near-death experiences, finding others who'd seen light, felt love, carried warnings. It gave me hope, but the loneliness lingered, like I was shouting into a void. I kept pushing. I started a blog, Ethan's Warning, posting about the visions, the choices, the paths. Some called me crazy, but others commented, "Amen," sharing their fears for the future. June loomed, not as a day but a season of reckoning. Was it climate collapse, political chaos, a spiritual shift? I didn't know, but I felt the clock ticking. The man in the vision, a symbol of power, reminded me of leaders today. Presidents, moguls, influencers. They're part of this, but so are we. Every small act, kindness, protest, prayer, builds the path to hope. Now, I'm asking you, do you feel this urgency? The world's at a crossroads, floods, fights, broken hearts. But we can choose better. I'm just Ethan, a kid from Cloverdale, but I believe one voice can spark change. Comment Amen if you're with me. Will you stay silent or act? The future's not set, it's ours to shape. Let's choose love, truth, and hope together before June decides for us.